According to the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, Estonian defenses, the Estonian Defense Force is what they're called, comprised of an Army, Navy, Air Force, and reserve units called the Estonian Defense League, which we'll get to. The Army is called the Estonian Land Forces, which is not just like an infantry, but many other things. 5,000 approximate war fighters enlisted, active duty. The Navy, the Estonian Navy has 400 units. The Air Force, Estonian Air Force, has 500 units. So as we see, it looks like the CIA estimates that the Estonian defense reservists have about 15,000 units. But checking out the Estonian Defense Forces official website, they list approximately 63,000 units, more than twice as much. I don't know if it's my math. I know in the States we use something besides the metric system, but I don't know if it's a translation issue. It seems that the Estonians separate up their reserve units a little differently, and I haven't delved into all that. The EDF rapid response readiness, they list as at 29,000 units, the EDF supplementary reserve 4,000, the EDF trained reserve is 30,000 units. I'm not sure exactly how all of these are different. It looks like maybe the reservists who've maybe previously served active duty rank amongst this 30,000 figure, whereas the rapid response perhaps are not previously active duty members, service members. And then they list the total EDF mobilization register as 230,000 units. Maybe that's active duty plus all of everybody else. I mean, from what I found, this photograph is of a women's division of the reserves. They also, the Estonians seem to have Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, Estonian versions. If like the US had the Boy and Girl Scouts listed under the official government and official Department of Defense, then maybe we would perhaps list them as potential fighting members. I'm not sure, but I had it written down. The the Young Eagles is like the young boys division of the reserves, and then the ladies, the young ladies, is the home defense, something like that. I guess it doesn't matter right now in this video, but it's not like they send children out to go fight, but they do train them morally and in other capacities, I think similar to the Scouts in the United States. So let's compare some numbers here. The CIA's estimate of the Estonian warfighters plus the Russians, and we're going to include the Estonians and Russians' take on their own fighting numbers too. Either way, it's clear who has more forces. The Estonians only have 6,000 active duty members, whereas the Russians have approximately 900,000. We say approximately because the CIA says that estimates, they're not difficult to find, but that estimates vary. So in my personal view, I would think that that's the same as saying it's difficult to know exactly how many active duty members the Russians have. It's difficult to estimate. Estimates differ. Now, as far as reservists, the CIA says Estonia only has 5,000. Estonia says they have more. I don't know if they're including the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Of course, that's not what they're actually called. But Estonia says that all in all, they have 230,000 registered members to use to mobilize. Russia claims to have 1 million reservists. This is not true. 4 years ago, they said that they wanted to have 1 million by this time, but some information came out in the free press this month, indicating otherwise. And that's from strategy page. It's in the description below if you want to check it out. That's really more of a subject for a separate video. This video focuses on, and this video series focuses on the Estonians' defensive capabilities and militaristic capabilities and whatnot, not the Russians, but they are located geographically right next to and along the border of Russia. Estonia is. So Russia does have a National Guard. I don't know if they can be deployed across their border the way that the U.S. National Guard can be used, but the Russians have approximately 200,000 units according to the CIA's World Fact Book. So Russia has approximately 900,000 active duty units and 200,000 National Guard, and let's just say they have 1 million reservists. That gives them 2.1 million total units versus Estonia's purported 230,000 people that they can draw upon. It's not going to be a fair fight if the two ever had to face each other one-on-one. It's kind of like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson versus a dwarf hamster. The dwarf hamster likes to bite, and I'm sure it would hurt Dwayne's thumb if he picked it up, but in less than 1 second, that little hamster would not be living anymore if the two ever had to, for whatever reason, fight to the death. Russia and Estonia, it's very overpowered as far as the balance is considered here. That's why Estonia in 2004 joined the world's oldest and most effective military alliance, NATO. So the North Atlantic Treaty, Article 5, this is the most famous article. If you study Homeland Security or global security, you're going to know this article number by name. This presented on the screen right here is the entirety of the article. In essence, in short and brief, in a nutshell, this article is what activates the alliance, the military alliance. So the parties agree. I had my laser pointer here. Follow the laser. The parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or North America shall be considered an attack against them all. While I'm thinking of it, I think the treaty organization should update the treaty language to include other areas besides North America and Europe. At the end of the same paragraph, they mentioned the security of the North Atlantic area. If the alliance would like to include more members, which other aspects of the treaty seems to permit, perhaps I suggest NATO guys, if you want, if you're watching this, consider having a meeting to allow an update to the language. That's all I have to say about that. But if an armed attack against one or more members of the alliance occurs, it shall be considered as an attack against them all. And it appears, guys, that the treaty obligates members to assist the other members in case of such an attack occurs. And such assistance shall be happen individually and in concert with the other members. And this assistance shall include, but not only include, the use of armed force. I'm not sure what else can be done besides armed force, but it shall include armed force to restore and maintain the security of the North Atlantic area. Any such armed attack and all measures taken as a result. My little screen's in the way. I need to make a point to remove that. There we go. Any such armed attack and all measures taken as a result thereof shall immediately be reported to a Security Council defined and described elsewhere within this treaty. Such measures shall be terminated when the Security Council has taken all the measures necessary to restore and maintain international peace and security. So I think the U.S. military policy should definitely reference this aspect of the NATO treaty. Article 5 at the very end, take measures to restore and maintain the peace, and the military action should be terminated then. So we should have an end game. Anytime we want to take military action, there should be an end game where the military action shall be terminated. That's a lesson for another day, or for another video, if at all, if we get there. But the treaty does make it plain and clear that any collective alliance-based military activity, action, war needs to come to an end, and the end looks like something. It specifically looks like when there is a restoration of the peace and security of the locale. I had a few comments I wanted to remark on this treaty. One, just so people in Moscow know, NATO does not have any language saying it needs to preemptively invade any nation. NATO does not have any language indicating that or mandating for any members to just go ahead and attack Russia or anywhere else. NATO is, especially NATO Article 5 of the treaty, specifically is a purely defensive operation. So if and only if any member nation is attacked by somebody else outside of the alliance. I don't think people within the alliance would attack each other, but again, that's like potentially another conversation for another time. But if any member is attacked, then and only then would the other members be forced to attack. Attack or respond. Now, in the previous video, we referenced Red War, a fictional novel written by Kyle Mills in the fictional series started by the late author Vince Flynn. In Red War, which I do recommend at least listening to the audiobook if you don't feel like you have time to read it, he outlines several likely scenarios that need to happen in conjunction with each other to make an environment where Russia would invade the Baltics. It's like a hurricane. If you live near cyclones or hurricanes or any similar weather phenomena, you know that there must be certain environmental conditions occurring in the same location at the same time in order for that great storm to occur. So in the instance of hurricanes, you need to have the right kind of atmospheric pressure, you need to have the right kind of air temperature, you need to have the right kind of ocean temperatures, etc. Depending on who you talk to, you need to have the right political figures in office, and then you'll either have more hurricanes or less hurricanes. I mean, that's what we talk about here in the United States. And I'm sure we talk about that in other nations too, but I notice whenever there's more hurricane activity or less, or the hurricane goes the right way or the wrong way, the hurricane knows who was in office at the time. And I believe I am very qualified to comment on that specific subject. Anyhow, this map is provided by the publisher of Red War. It's a very good looking map. I provided the arrows to help illustrate what the narrative is suggesting. So of course, here is Estonia, and the blue represents the NATO joint military activity leaving after a war game activity. They don't use the term war games, they use the term joint exercises, and they do them regularly and all the time, but not at all times. So We'll get to the other potential variables to explain why would Moscow ever invade the Baltics, but in the narrative, similar to Ukraine in real life, in the narrative of Red War, the Russians decided to initially strive to take more land as opposed to less, and then events, I won't get into all of them or give away plot details, but they were pressed just to go for one. I believe the one they settled with was Estonia, but you know, even if it was Latvia and not Estonia, but the principle was the same. The principle was that NATO was doing their joint military exercise in the region, and then they ended the exercise. So they returned all the joint vessels back to their respective nations on the way doing so, and then the Russians came in. The idea was that the Russians coming in was similar to, but not exactly like, a blitzkrieg, which is a German World War II Germany military tactic, where they were just suddenly and well orchestratedly moving all at the same time. And so it's not like the NATO troops couldn't do anything, but by the time they returned within reasonable range to do anything, in the narrative Red War, the Russians had taken over Estonia. If you do experimental research of any kind, typically you'll find this type of dynamic between two kinds of variables: the dependent, the object of your study, and the variables that are independent and cannot be affected directly by it per your study. Please don't be confused by this. Any problem solving you go through in any context, in any field, industry, no matter how important or trivial, how singular or widespread, it can be simplified to a simple thought experiment, a model. You can do this on a chalkboard. You find whatever it is you're trying to assess, analyze, or predict. That's your object of study. That is your dependent variable. And one day I'll get my laser pointer up and ready before I begin recording. So here, dependent variable. What would it take for the dependent variable to either currently exist or potentially exist? This is how we kind of frame it in social sciences. Sherman Kent was a CIA analyst, and long ago he said that the intelligence industry needed to become more academic and more strict and incorporate, adopt, and recruit aspects from all the other disciplines. So when you think about it, intelligence studies also include everything about weather, from weather to geopolitics to human behavioral psychology, and the list endlessly goes on. So we can use a model that you would use in other experiments and ask, okay, what can make this dependent variable either happen or potentially happen? It's dependent because it depends on these other various variables to either exist or occur, which is the same thing. So the theory in qualitative research is that if you take away, remove, or alter, augment, change any of the independent variables, in theory, your hypothesis could state that it would affect the dependent variable. So in Red War, we essentially ask ourselves a good question: what would it take for Russia to invade Estonia and or the Baltics? In the book, I outlined these. There may be more. One independent variable includes that the Russian president is ill, terminally. I believe he had some kind of cancer. The other one is that, of course, he would be nationalistic. Another one is that, and nationalistic could be revised and replaced with a better term to better describe his mental belief system and behavior. This one over here, what if I assume he does, or that the office would have complete power over the Russian armed forces, but this is nonetheless essential in order for this to occur. Furthermore, the Russians, like I said before, waited until a joint NATO training drill had recently ended, and they were so far away that they would inevitably turn back, but it would essentially be too late for them to prevent an invasion, especially if the Russians conducted an invasion as quickly and swiftly as they did with Crimea, Ukraine. Last two variables we have here, most NATO troops have traveled too far away to return quickly enough to respond. Okay, so I separate these two. That they had to have recently had a training drill, so you have a lot of military forces gathered in one spot on the globe and on their own move away essentially from Russia. So pay attention to this, NATO guys. I'm sure you are aware of this. I'm sure you've read the book, but in the book, the fictional version of Russia depended on NATO concentrating a lot of forces near Russia and then moving them away, so far away that they couldn't react or respond fast enough. I haven't had any coffee yet. Almost done here. The last one, Russian state media needs to be able to really push and defend anything the Russian military is doing. So if the military is invading like they did with Ukraine and Crimea, we look at that as an actual example of the Russian state-sponsored media, or you can say propaganda, really defended everything the government had done. And the press environment is very hostile as far as freedom of alternative opinions. I really appreciate you sticking with me to the end. I try to do this early in the morning without coffee, but we got a lot of good data out here, and hopefully we'll be able to explore more together very soon.